I'm Frank Garza, and welcome to Here and Abroad, a podcast that follows the U.S. men's national team and their player pool across Europe, MLS, or wherever else they play their club football. On today's show, we're going to do a deep dive on USMNT center backs. We'll also discuss which U.S. players stood out this past week at their clubs and who will be keeping an eye on this upcoming weekend. To help me do all of that, Kyle Bond from the Sporting News is back. Kyle, are you ready to talk about some center backs today?
Let's do it. Defending isn't exactly the sexiest thing of all time. It's not. We're not talking goals and assists, but let's get into it.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to do this because I've kind of grown really irritated with our center back pool that I feel like nobody's really kind of stepped up and taken it, and I just feel like it's still a wide open race. And I wanted to start by each of us kind of going through what our depth chart is, our top five center backs as it stands right now. Because what I've seen from Pochettino for a 23-man roster, he usually brings in five, is what we've been seeing. And so for those of you watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see our sheet where me and Kyle are going to be ranking these. And for those who are only listening, I'll read off everything that we're doing. But so we're gonna each do our top five center backs at the stands right now. And what I have here on the list is a list of center backs broken into different categories. The first category is the five center backs that were called into the Nations League Final Four: Cameron Carter-Vickers, Mark McKenzie, Tim Ream, Chris Richards, Austin Trusty. Austin Trusty ended up not coming due to injury, but he was called in. The next five are center backs that were on that Nations League provisional roster. I believe that's a 60-man provisional roster. Noah Kai Banks, George Campbell, Jackson Reagan, Miles Robinson, Walker Zimmerman. And then I've added three others that I think are kind of maybe in the periphery that we've talked about on this show. Maybe they're there. Andrew Privet, one of Kyle's favorites that he talks a lot about at Charlotte FC. Matt Miazga, who's back from injury, and then Jalen Neal. So Kyle, I'll hand it over to you. Give me your top five center backs as it stands right now.
Yeah. So I think at this point, when I look at this list, I do not think that Tim Ream should be a top five center back in this player pool at this day and age. I mean, those of you who listen to this podcast have heard me say this more than once. He's not even the best center back on his club, and that remains true. The fact that Andrew Privet is still not getting a look, like he's not even on the provisional roster, is astonishing. He is having another great season, and he has been fantastic at the back. He's even scored a goal. And he's just been excellent. He did get a red card late in one game, but it was a dog so foul, so just one game suspension. Overall, he's been great. So I would say the other four at the top of this list are four that I would put in that top five. So you've got Carter-Vickers, McKenzie, Richards, and Trusty. I think they're performing in Europe. They are playing well for the most part for their clubs. And things have been a little rocky for Chris Richards on both the international and club level, but I do think he's still in that top five category. Whether he's a starter or not, you can debate, but he's in that top five group. Then you need one more. And at this point, I think it's between Miles Robinson and Walker Zimmerman. I really do believe Privet is in this conversation, but because he hasn't gotten a look, we just don't have any information on him at the national team level. I'm astonished that, with all the chances that Mauricio Pochettino has had to rotate guys, he's pretty much run out of room when it comes to being able to do that. So I'm shocked that Privet hasn't gotten that chance yet, but, he's not the only one who didn't really get a fair shake. I think, we saw that with Josh Sargent, who I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later in the show, but just got named to the championship team of the season, which is awesome. I,
That is awesome.
I think right now, given his experience, I would put Walker Zimmerman probably slightly ahead of Miles Robinson, but Zimmerman has a concussion, and it was a nasty one, and we don't know when he'll be back. So, if you're picking a team right now, obviously it would be Robinson, but both of these guys are performing in MLS. So I think if you're picking a team right now, it would be Robinson, but I would say right now it's Walker Zimmerman. All things being even, everybody being healthy.
If they're healthy, yeah.
Yeah, I think Zimmerman would be my number 5. Jackson Reagan is not having a good season with Seattle. Seattle's not having a good season overall. I've been a proponent of Jackson Reagan in the past, but they're not playing well at the moment. So especially defensively, so I can't really see it happening. And the other two guys on that provisional roster are quite untested. And I think right now it would be hard to even consider either of them in that group. When you look at those guys that you put at the bottom, the others to consider, I think Privet needs to be in this conversation. It's shocking to me that he's not. Miazga's having a good season with Cincinnati. He and Miles Robinson are pairing well. So I'm a bit surprised that he's not also included on this. And Jalen Neal is not having a good season right now with Montreal. He's barely played. He's had injuries, which, was the problem at the Galaxy. And everybody hoped that, a change of scenery is finally maybe something that he needs. And it hasn't worked out so far. So is not in the conversation at the moment. But that's sort of where this group stands.
So Cameron Carter-Vickers, Mark McKenzie, Chris Richards, Austin Trusty, Walker Zimmerman. Sounds like Walker Zimmerman was your last man in.
Yeah, it's like 5A,
any thoughts on how you
with him and Robinson?
Yeah. Any thoughts on how you would rank those first 4 if you had to put them in order on an actual depth chart?
Sure. So right now, I think the biggest question mark to me is Chris Richards. What is his deal? I guess, is the best way to put it. He had so much promise. He put in so many good shifts for Crystal Palace, for the U.S. national team. When he first moved to Palace, he was really struggling to get time. And then he broke into the squad, you remember, as a number 6, and started to get time at center back and was playing really well. He really earned his spot. And multiple times the coaching staff at Crystal Palace said, we really like Chris Richards. It's really unfortunate that he doesn't get a shot right now because he had 2 really, really good center backs who were well established at the club playing ahead of him. It's just the situation. And then it's just sort of not taken that next step. And his performances with the U.S. national team have dipped a bit. And so you could put him in by default. I'm not sure that's the right play, but I'm going to do that right now because of a lack of better options. I think in an ideal world, I'd actually really like to pair Carter-Vickers and Trusty together because they know each other from the club level, and I think that matters. But I think Richards deserves, by past performances, to work through this stretch. And I think he should be given every chance to be a starter in the World Cup. If he can't grab it, then he can't grab it. And at some point, Pochettino has to make a change. But I think right now, he's earned the chance to put that, to be given that chance, that opportunity, that leeway. Now, who do you put with him? There's an argument to be made for everybody on this list. I think the best performer at the club level right now is Mark McKenzie. But Mark has also not played terribly well with the U.S. national team in his few chances. Neither has Carter-Vickers, and Trusty hasn't really gotten a ton of chances. And Zimmerman's my 5th guy on this list. I don't think I'm putting him in the top 2. So there's problems, and there's an argument to be made for all of them. I think I've always been a proponent of Carter-Vickers in the past. To me, I think he's the guy right now for me. I think it's sort of 2A, 2B with him and McKenzie. I would put McKenzie third, Trusty fourth, and Zimmerman fifth. But I think any of those guys two through four, you could make a very compelling argument for, and I would be happy with it.
Yeah. I mean, that's what makes this center back kind of race so intriguing, is that there's so much parity. There's really no standouts. I think Chris Richards, I'm with you. We want him to be the standout.
Yes.
He seems like the guy that could be the standout, but he hasn't done it at the national team level yet. And so there's just so much parity between these guys, but no standouts. And so it's like
that sentence that you just said, Frank, is kind of the story for a lot of guys on the U.S. national team right now, which is weird why fans are so frustrated, right? Do we want him to be the guy? He's shown he can be the guy, but he hasn't been the guy. And you can say that about probably 5 or 6 players on this team right now.
Yeah.
And that is so annoying.
Yeah. So with that in mind, with that being kind of annoying, and that just kind of, I've been kind of irritated with this, but it really hit me after this Nations League Final Four that I'm like kind of a little fed up with the center back pool and how nobody's grabbed it. And so with that being said, I'm going to shock you with who I bring in as my number one.
If you put Tim Ream, man.
I'm putting Tim Ream here, and here's why. First of all, I hate that I'm putting him there. I don't want to put him there. But
he's making mistakes.
I don't think he's making more mistakes than the other guys. That's the thing. I don't think there's any of these guys that have outplayed him on the field, and so that's one point. There's nobody that's taken it from him. The second thing is that, Mauricio Pochettino, the current coach, Greg Berhalter, their previous coach, are both ex-center backs. So they know center backs a lot better than I do. And both of them, I mean, they don't come out and say Tim Ream's their number one, but they consistently started him, and he seemed like he was kind of like the guy like for them. And so I'm gonna give them a little bit of credit here and be like, okay, they know more than they must be seeing something, but I don't want him to be there. I don't want him to end up there. But I'm tired of waiting on all these guys to like take the position from him, and I'm not going to give it to him anymore 1 year from a World Cup. I'm not going to say, well, Chris Richards, obviously, he's the younger guy. He has a bright future, so let's give it to him. He's going to – I mean, that was 3 years ago. Now I'm like, okay, it's today. Who am I going to put in there today? So I do put Tim Ream number one. I put Cameron Carter-Vickers. I'm going to go ahead and say number two. I put him ahead of Chris Richards because, again, he's shown me more. Even though he hasn't been great lately for the national team, he started that group stage game in the World Cup against Iran, and arguably the biggest win this generation of players has had, a must-win game to move on to the knockout rounds, and he played well. So yep. I know I can trust him.
And he's improved immensely at the club level this season with Rangers. They were consistently getting smacked around in Europe for years with him even on the field, and this year they just weren't as much of a pushover, and so I think he deserves credit for that.
Yeah. So I feel like I can trust this guy. He hasn't played a lot for the national team yet, but he's at least shown me what he can do on a World Cup stage in kind of like an elimination game. Then I agree with you. Chris Richards is there, and honestly, so I have Chris Richards as number 3. I mean, I want him to take one of these spots, but I don't want to give it to him, because I just don't feel like he's come in and grabbed it yet, even though I think you, me, and most every USMNT fan sees him as the guy that could be this star center back for us. And then, I'm going to go, I think the rest of the same in your order. Next would be McKenzie for me. Next would be, Trusty for me. So we have the same 4. We match on 4 of the players. I chose Tim Ream. You chose Walker Zimmerman. My order is Ream, Carter-Vickers, Richards, McKenzie, Trusty. Yours is Richards, Carter-Vickers, McKenzie, Trusty, Zimmerman. But like I said, I think another person could come in and give you a totally different, these guys in a totally different order, because that's how close I think this competition is right now.
And what's so frustrating, and the reason I keep hammering at Andrew Privet, Frank, is that they need someone to step up. And why not call in a guy who is one of the best center backs in MLS, who is somebody who has consistently performed day in and day out for his club, and bring someone new in. And Pochettino had the chance, and now it's a little late for that. But this would have been a good opportunity. The Gold Cup would have been a great opportunity for Privet to at least get in camp and show him what he can do. And the fact that it's not happening.
Well, it could happen. This provisional roster is from the Nations League. They haven't released.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, this is the provisional roster from the Nations League. So they won't release the provisional roster for the Gold Cup until 30 days out, I believe.
Gotcha.
So somewhere around mid-May. So yeah, he still has a chance. And that's kind of where I wanted to go next. Is we have our 5 guys here, but I think with this June camp, they're going to have 2 friendlies. Then they're going to have the Gold Cup. I'm envisioning there's going to be this really big camp with extra. He may bring in 30 players, then only bring 23 to the Gold Cup or whatever. The next question I want to ask you is if you had to choose 2 other center backs to bring into that camp, whether it be to get a look at them, whether it be just to provide a little bit more depth to these other guys. Knowing that we're going to have a bigger camp with extra players, who are the 2 guys that you would bring in? I mean, is Andrew Privet the first one?
No, so I'm debating between 3, because here's the thing. I still think Tim Ream is up on this list. He would be my number 6 guy if I were to continue the list further. Actually, he would probably be number 7, because like I said, Zimmerman and Robinson are kind of even for me, so a 5A and a 5B. So I would put Robinson 6, Ream 7, Privet 8, but I think there's way more value in Privet being there to give him a chance to play. So I would probably say Ream would be one of those guys. If we're bringing 2 extra, Ream would be 1, and then Privet would be 2, and then you either pick Robinson or Zimmerman for that 5th spot. So that's kind of how I would play it.
Okay, I see. So yeah, you're going to choose Zimmerman or Robinson.
One of Zimmerman
whichever
or
one of
Robinson
those
would be 5.
is going to be left home.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I hear you. And I would take, I think, who would I take? I would take Noah Kai Banks just to bring him in. I know he's young. This is the guy that, is playing for Augsburg. What is he, 20, something like that?
He's 18.
Oh, is he 18? Okay, so he's even younger. So maybe a stretch, but I mean, if I'm going to bring in some extra guys, I'm why not bring him in and take a look at him?
But he's played 270 minutes in the Bundesliga this year. I just don't.
Yeah.
Why bring in an 18?
Was he not starting anymore?
No,
I thought he was starting.
He's injured, and he's only played eight games this season. It's not pulling up his game log right away. But you know what? To me, it's not the time to be getting looks at an 18-year-old who's maybe he's not going to be an option at the World Cup. I don't see the value in that. He started 2 games this season in the Bundesliga, and he's not even injured. Well, he just picked up an injury, but he's been on the bench. I don't see the purpose of that.
Yeah. Well, if he's injured, that I don't know what his injury is. I should have. It's
a thigh injury. He just picked it up.
Okay. I had thought he was starting kind of more regularly. If he's not, I might reconsider that. But I initially had Noah Kai Banks, and then Matt Miazga was the other guy. assuming he's progressing from his injury, just because he's another one of these veteran MLS guys that I think I want Pochettino to get a look at him, because he kind of has some attitude and some scrappiness that I think perhaps Pochettino, well, I know he likes, but he's kind of looking for. And so I'd like to just see him, bring him in, see what he can do. And then, I mean, maybe I'm rethinking my Noah Kai Banks. I might bring in the Andrew Privet, like you suggested. But I would bring in one MLS kind of guy, and I would bring in one kind of, when I say MLS guy, I know Privet's an MLS guy too, but one kind of veteran MLS guy that we kind of know from the pool. And then I would bring in somebody new, whether it's Noah Kai Banks, whether it's Andrew Privet, whoever, just to kind of get a look at somebody else.
Yeah, that's kind of how I played it too with Ream and Privet. A guy that's a veteran and somebody who I think deserves a shot.
Okay. Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, we're about to get into the month of May. I think in a couple weeks, we'll see the provisional roster for the Gold Cup. So we'll at least know who Poch and the staff is considering. And we'll see how these center backs play out. Okay, let's move on to USMNT performances at their club. And I'll ask you, who's somebody that stood out for you in the past week? And this could be positive or negative.
Sure. So before I get to the main one, I've got a curveball for you. And it's I'm kind of cheating here because it's not really a performance over the past week, if you will, but an achievement from the past week that I think deserves notoriety. Well, two. I mentioned one earlier in Josh Sargent, who won EFL Championship not player of the season, but was on the team of the season. He was the striker on the team of the season, which was really cool. But the one I was going to go with was Diego Cochin, who is the Barcelona youth goalkeeper. He has been with the first team because he's been their number 3 pretty much the whole season, with Ter Stegen out injured. With Ter Stegen out injured and Chesney the starter. Iñaki Peña has been the backup, and then Cochin has been on the bench as the number 3. I don't think you need 3 goalkeepers for every game, but a lot of teams do it nowadays, so it is what it is. But he was playing with the youth team for a minute before he got needed at the first team level, and he made one appearance in the UEFA Youth League, and it was a penalty shootout win over, I want to say it was Trabzonspor. It was one of the Turkish teams. He made a save in the penalty shootout, played really well. And that was back in the quarterfinals, I want to say. So it was an important win. And the team just won the UEFA Youth League title this past week, I think yesterday or something. So he got a title from that. Now, again, he hasn't been playing very much in that tournament, but for him to pick up a title there and to have played in a very important victory in the process, I think he deserves a little bit of notoriety. It would have been nice to see him play more, and not be sort of wasting a year of development just rotting on the Barcelona bench as the number 3 goalkeeper. But they have to do that because of some complicated stuff with Ter Stegen, who's like back healthy now, but not playing. So it is what it is, but wanted to shout that out because I think he deserves a little bit of credit for that. And then I want to give Christian Pulisic a shout out. He's my guy for this because things have been toxic as hell at AC Milan the second half of this season. He went through a big stretch of bad form after his calf injury, and really, honestly, even before his calf injury. He went from October 29th to March 2nd with 5 assists and 1 goal in league play. Now, he had some other performances there. He scored in both the Super Cup semis and the finals, whatever. But in league play, he really struggled from a goal-scoring perspective. And that stretch was kind of yucky for him in the Champions League too. And he has roared back to life at the end of the season. Milan's having a nice little resurgence. They knocked Inter out of the Coppa Italia. He played 78 minutes in that game. Didn't score, didn't get an assist, but they won 3-0. Played well. And he's got 4 goals and 2 assists in the last month plus. So, and he scored this past weekend against Venezia. So I think Pulisic deserves a shout out because he sort of disappeared from the American viewport as we, don't get the sensationalist of him scoring every week. And the conversation has moved to who's our starting center back, who, which guys are hurt, yada, yada. Like, is there anybody that's going to come up and save us? That's sort of where the conversation has been. So he's fallen out of the conversation, but he deserves a little bit of credit. And so he's going to be my top performer this past weekend, and really nice to see him getting going consistently in the past month or so.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it was only maybe a week ago I had called him out as one of the more disappointing performances. I forget who they were playing in Serie A, but I watched the game. Atalanta, okay. And I just didn't even barely notice him, on the field. So to see him come out in the game against Venezia and score a goal right away was awesome. I'll also mention just a few other guys. Diego Luna scored 2 goals. Chris Richards, more of a team accomplishment, but like you mentioned earlier, he went the full 90 in Crystal Palace's FA Cup semi-win over Aston Villa. Now he's going to get to play in the FA Cup final against Man City, one of the biggest games anybody could play in, which is huge. And then I also wanted to just mention John Tolkien, who he's had some injuries at Holstein Kiel, but I've been impressed with how he's gone over there and established himself as a starter. The only time he's not starting is when he's had a couple of injuries. He did get injured this past weekend as well, but he had an assist this weekend, and he just seems to be, a strong contributor, to that team as they're fighting against relegation in the Bundesliga.
I've got one more for you too. Johnny Cardoso has been exceptional for Real Betis down the stretch. They have won, let me count here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They've won 8 of their last 10 and have shot up the table. They are now in real contention for a Champions League place. Spain gets 5 Champions League places this year. They're in 6th, and they're a point back of Villarreal for that last Champions League place. And Johnny Cardoso has scored 3 goals since the beginning of March. He did not score last weekend. They won 5-1. So, clearly a top performer there. But he also scored a goal in a 3-1 win over Girona on the road the week before that. So he's been exceptional. And that is great to see, because there's a chance that he could really play a big role in that club earning Champions League qualification next season. Now, there's no guarantee he'll be there for that, because there's a lot of rumors that he's either going to Tottenham because they've got that agreement, or he's going somewhere else. Somebody else is going to swoop in and buy him. I think Tottenham's probably the right level for him right now. But it would be really great to see him in the Champions League if he were to stick around at Real Betis. Obviously, Tottenham not playing in Europe next season. Yikes. Well, we don't know that yet. They could win the Europa League, but hard to imagine that happening. So we'll see. But it's he has been exceptional over the past month, and getting a big goal 2 weekends ago is great to see.
Yeah, it would be great to see him play in the Champions League. He's going to be playing this week as Real Betis takes on Fiorentina in the first leg of the Europa Conference League semifinal. So that's going to be interesting to watch. And speaking of next week, that's my final question for you is which USMNT player are you going to have your eye on this week or weekend? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Awkward question.
We just, yeah, I think that's it. I think it's got to be Johnny. I want to see it because he's another guy that is putting in good shifts for the club and just hasn't put it together for the U.S. national team. It's just not translating right now. And so if he can make waves in Europe and then help the club to qualify for Champions League, maybe that's a sign that, the consistency is starting to build. But he's another guy that I think fans want more of from at the national team level and just haven't seen it yet. So he's probably somebody I want my eye on.
Yeah, 100%. I'll mention a few. Final weekend of the championship. Saturday is the last of the regular season. Both Coventry and Middlesbrough are still alive for promotion, and they play each other. So Aidan Morris versus Haji Wright, trying to get into the promotion playoffs, which would be huge. And then Serginho Dest. We talked about him, I think, on a recent show. He's now missed 3 matches in a row. I hit up Rick Elfrink, who's like the main PSV journalist on Twitter, and he told me that they're expecting him to play this upcoming match, which will be Saturday. And so I'm going to be keeping my eye on that. Does he get back on the field? Because I'm starting to get concerned about Serginho Dest, and is he injured again? Is he having some kind of a setback from his injury? I mean, I want to get him going so that he can join the U.S. men's national team June camp. So that's what I'll be keeping my eye on. But
also, a hilarious note about Serginho Dest, if you didn't see about a week ago, Voteball had a tweet or a story from one of PSV's press conferences. Apparently, Serginho Dest has always felt that left back was his best position, and has now decided that that's not the case, that he could also do well at right back. And he decided this by watching YouTube videos of himself.
Yes, I did see that.
It's fantastic.
Well, he's pretty famous for putting out like highlight reels of himself on Instagram, isn't he? Of like,
yes,
they'll put down like reels together of like his great performances, from like the weekend or whatever. So, hey, maybe Serginho Dest loves himself some Serginho Dest. I mean, I know I like watching him. Maybe he enjoys watching him himself as well. All right, Kyle. Well, I will make sure and put links in the show notes to your X account, which is @_bonfire, and also to your work at the Sporting News. Thanks again for joining the show.
Thank you. Love it.
And thanks to everyone for listening to Here and Abroad. If you enjoyed the episode, please do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, or that follow button if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or somewhere else. Thank you so much. I'm Frank Garza. You can follow me on X @FrankGarza007, and I'll be back next week with a new episode.